Why are doors so complicated in multiplayer games? Getting all players in the game to see the same thing when a door is opened or closed in an Unreal Engine 5 project is quite the process. So let's get right into part 2 of how I was able to get the result you're seeing right now. And moving on, we're going to go down to begin play, and we're going to update this loop to use a new function that we're going to define. And basically, instead of looping through the keys, we're just going to use an explicit adding function for initialization, as you can see there. So we're going to define that on the receiver component. And the reason we need to make this change is because the way that we're doing the replication of the keys, it isn't going to work if we're adding multiple keys at the same time. And that's something I realized when I was looking at this. So we add this function so we can add multiple keys just directly at begin play and initialization, but then we aren't going to use that again. There isn't going to be a time where we need to add multiple keys in actual gameplay, so this will work out as a solution while still allowing us to keep that network efficient method of adding keys. And now we have one more change to make that I realized while debugging. We need to get rid of that has authority check. It was needed when we were trying to replicate those key adds like we were before, but now that we're adding them all individually on each machine at begin play, we want it to obviously add the keys on machines that aren't the server, because these are now not going to get replicated at begin play like we had it earlier. So just make this change, or else the clients won't get the keys added and your game won't work. And now we move on to defining the interactable actor interface. So once I close down this side menu here, start copying down that description. But the gist of it is that we need this interface to have those interact and interact local functions, because we want those to be on every interactable actor, because each of them are going to handle the interactions differently. I believe the next one we're going to make is the actual doll in the game, and you'll see how different that will look than the door, obviously. But this interface just allows us to have those two functions on all our interactable actors, and it's a nice clean way to do it. And we can also add those functions on interactable actors that aren't that interactable actor class. So where that'll come up is the player character, because we can't have multiple inheritance in Unreal. So we put this interact interface in here so we can add it to the player character when we need to later on. And in terms of the actual code that you're seeing, just copy down the syntax. It's just standard stuff for adding the interface, and it's identical to what we've had previously, so nothing new you're seeing here. And then we'll scroll down a little bit to get to the actual function definitions. And as you can see, we have that interact and interact local like I was talking about earlier, and just copy those down. And these are our interact functions that we're going to rely upon throughout the game and the code base to interact with actors. So once we have those definitions in, we can move on. And now that we're done with that, we'll move over to the CPP and paste in some code. And as you can see, we're just defining these functions, and obviously they're not going to be doing anything because we want our child classes that inherit this interface to define the functions. So very straightforward, and it's actually the same as what we did in the interactable actor CPP as well. And now we have a few changes to make in our interaction interface. and we'll paste in that function that we called earlier, the set interaction keys initialization only. So we literally put that in the function name to prevent us from accidentally calling it later, because this will only work at begin play. So later on, when we're adding keys, we have to remember to not add multiple of them at the same time, because then they're not going to add correctly, like I talked about earlier. This is kind of annoying, to be honest, but the alternative would be to replicate all of our keys and then the Boolean flag arrays as well, which is not great. So we're just going to take that network optimization and roll with it, and just know moving forward that we can't add multiple keys at the same time, which is fine. We can live with that. And now we'll move on a bit, and we need to start adding the parameter here, the do interaction once, to our interaction key adding framework that we've set up. So we just paste in the comment, and then we're going to paste in the parameter, and we can add a space there to give us some more room, and we're all set there. And now we'll move on to the .cpp, and we'll go in here, and we're going to paste in that function. So there you go. So see, it doesn't do anything in the interface, and we'll leave it to the child classes to override it. And then we need to add the parameter to our add interaction key. And again, don't worry about the red underline. It'll correct itself eventually, but we are all set here with the interaction interface. And now we'll move over to the receiver comp, and we need to update our add interaction key function. As you can see, it's very distressed right now with 2 underlines. Very exciting. And we'll add the parameter and the comment and add a little space. And don't worry, those underlines will go away once we regenerate our project files. And I promise that we won't have any trouble building the project because of these underlines. And look at that, they're already gone. So that's good. Alright, so moving on, we are going to go up here and get rid of that forward declaration, because we no longer need a reference to that widget. We forgot to take that out last time, so no big deal. And now we're going to add in our performed interaction function. And basically the effect of this function is we want to be able to find out when we have performed an interaction. And you'll see with the door, the reason we need to do this is so we can update the interaction UI. Because obviously, once the interaction has been performed, we're going to need to change what the UI says and looks like. So that'll be the main function for this. But in the future, we'll have this function called when the interaction is performed, and we can add whatever logic we want onto here. So that's always good to build in future development capabilities. And now we'll scroll down some more and paste in some setters for the receiver comp. And as you can see, we have our set interaction keys initialization only. So that's what we were talking about earlier. And we really need this to be implemented so we can set those keys on begin play. And then we also have a set interaction text. And the reason why we need to do this is because with the door, when it is open, we want the text to say, press to close the door, and vice versa. So when it's closed, we want to prompt the player to press to open the door. So we just want to add that functionality in here so we can change what the text says dynamically. And you'll see us call this function when we start working on the actual door itself. And now we need to go down here and add in some parameters. So this first one is going to be that array that keeps track of how many times we can do interactions. So as you can see, we have our do interactions once, and it lines up with the interaction keys need key press array. So these are going to be updated at the same time and all that good stuff. And to that end, we have a replicated flag for the new do interaction once. So again, this is going to be updated just like the interaction key needs key presses to give us that network optimization. So now we're only updating one flag versus the entire array of them, which would be very expensive over the network. And again, when we can optimize things from a networking perspective, we are always going to go that route. And now that we're done with the .h, we'll go over to the .cpp and we'll throw in a do rep lifetime for the do interaction once. So just like the needs key press one, we want the replication of this to be exactly the same. So this is the first step in doing that. And then we'll scroll down here to the add interaction key, and we'll add in that parameter real quick. And again, like I said, we're going to add in that new do interaction once and have it copy the logic of the new interaction key needs key press. So first we set the variable and then we place it into our local array, just like that. And then we're all set with the changes to the add interaction key. We'll then scroll down here a bit and we are going to paste in the remove logic. So again, just following the example that we've been following the whole time. Nothing too interesting there. And now we'll keep scrolling a little bit to update our update box extent function. So we're going to update the comment and add a line. And what we're doing now is we're making sure that the new extent isn't just 0. Because if it is just 0, that indicates that the caller just wants what they set in the blueprint to be the box extent. And you'll see how helpful it is to set the box extent visually in blueprints instead of just setting the value like we initially set up. But you'll see that when we go to set up the door blueprint later on. We'll then scroll down a little bit more and we'll update our stop potential interaction. Just update that comment, no big deal. But next, we need to add in a change here where we null out our potential interaction actor. Because once we are stopping that potential interaction, we don't want to have our logic thinking that we have a potential interaction actor. This will basically solve a little bug that I found that will keep the UI up when we should be stopping interaction. So now that that's in here, we should have no issues with it moving forward. And then we'll keep scrolling down a little bit and paste in these two functions. So first we have performed interaction. And as you can see, the first thing we're doing is returning out if we can't find the key that's passed in. And then we'll get the index of the key that was passed in. And then once that key has been found, we are going to remove the key and all of its subsequent arrays, assuming that we are only supposed to do this interaction once. So now we won't even be triggered with the UI once we've done the interaction. So we'll go back to that example of the bomb. So let's say there's a bomb and we press the interaction key to blow it up. The actor will technically still be there. So if we don't remove the key, then the interaction UI is going to still stay there and say press F to explode the bomb, when it shouldn't be there anymore. And this logic of removing the key both at the local and then calling the server level function as well will make sure that the interaction can only be done once as is intended. So that's pretty good stuff there, and that will fix our issue. And although we don't need to test that yet with the door, it should work out once we have something like this implemented in the future for an actor that we only want to be interacted with once. And then we'll scroll down a bit and check out our set interaction text function. And as you can see, all we're doing is updating the actual text variable and then broadcasting that update subtext delegate because that's what the interaction text is bound to. So that's what we need to tell the UI to update. So nothing too interesting there. And we are checking to make sure that there is a potential interaction actor reference if we are going to update this UI. So just another check there that we want to make sure that we do have an actor that might want to interact with this component. That seems like a good place to call it for today. Stay tuned for part 3, which will come out at some point tomorrow. And with all that being said, thank you so much as always for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Later.